Okay, if you're speaking, you are muted, actually.
I don't know. I think I fixed that now. Can you hear me now? Can
Yes, we
anyone
can
hear
hear
me?
you.
I don't know why my network signal is very poor, but it's fine. I can work with that. Okay, let me know when it's right for me to start, Victoria.
Yeah, I said you can start.
All right. Okay. Hold on. Okay, so good morning, everyone. Um, Thank you for having me once again after a long break. Okay, so I have a presentation today, which is basically understanding Uniform Resource Identifier, which is short for URI. Okay, all right. So my name is IKEGBUNAM Daniel, a member of Python developer team. Okay, you can connect with me using my LinkedIn profile link down in the slide below. So what we'll be discussing today is ranging from introduction to Uniform Resource Identifier, components of URI, types of URI, the schemes of URI, the structures and syntax of URI, examples of Uniform Resource Identifier, Uniform Resource Identifier encoding, and URI use cases. Okay, we also go to security consideration, best practices for using Uniform Resource Identifiers. We conclude by asking you a question and thereby taking a question from you as well. Okay, so most of us must have visited a website today, before today rather. Okay, so in fact, before you open a Slack, if you use something like a personal computer, you are redirected to the Slack official page. Okay, so when we're talking about Uniform Resource Identifier, is a string of characters used to identify resource on the internet. Okay, so while it is Uniform Resource Identifier, anything on the internet or anything at all that a server can deliver to a client. Okay, when I'm talking about clients, I'm talking about your browser, your desktop, or whatever gadget it is that you are connected to the internet with. So whenever you are making a request, there is always an object or a resource that you want to get from the internet, of which you can get this resource using their identifier. And Uniform Resource Identifier serve as a string of characters that uniquely identify a particular resource on the internet. Okay, furthermore, URIs enable the interaction with resource over the web, whether by locating or referencing it. Okay, by referencing, we are talking about a particular domain name with the path to that file. Then by locating, we are talking about the name of that particular file or that particular resource on the internet. Okay, so we go over to talking about the importance of Uniform Resource Identifier. One, it is a fundamental for web architecture. The way a server serves a client is, first of all, a client has to make an HTTP request. Okay, and whatever it is, you are making, or whatever type of request, be it a post request, a get request, a put request, a delete request, a patch request, and more exotic ones. Anyways, you must get a response. Okay, so the response can be not found, which means the resources you are looking for is not found. The response could be 200, okay, which means the processing of your request went successful, and many others. The request can as well be 500, which could be a server error and not the client error. So one benefit of Uniform Resource Identifier is a fundamental to web architecture. Let me confirm, Victoria, am I sharing today's presentation with anyone?
Yeah, please, I didn't get you.
Yeah, I said if I'm sharing today's presentation with anyone.
No, you're alone. Just
All
you.
right. I wanted to manage my time. Okay, so the next importance of Uniform Resource Identifier is essential for assessing resources like web pages, images, and files. Okay, generally assessing files or web pages. Okay, so when we go to my own website, let me take that as a use case. Okay, udokikedaniel.com.ng. Okay, this is when we are talking about TLD of a domain, which is the top level domain, is basically the extension of that particular domain. Okay, then we're talking about the protocols of that domain, which could be an HTTP or HTTPS, depending on the encryption that is used on that particular domain. And we can as well have a subdomain, something like should I say education dot okay, something like lms.bincom.net. LMS there is a subdomain, okay, and .NET there is a top level domain. Now, if you want to access a particular web page or an image or a file, let's take for instance the about page in a particular website. It goes this way: the protocol, the subdomain, the domain name itself, the TLD, which is the top level domain, then slash the name of that particular page. Okay. If it's a file given name, it could be something like slash about.html, depending on how the developer named the file of that particular website. Okay. If you want to locate a particular image, it can be slash user.jpg. If it's a file, or should I say portable document format, it can be user.pdf. All right, so components of Uniform Resource Identifier. One is the scheme, okay? Scheme indicates the protocol used to access the resource. Example of scheme include HTTP, HTTPS, FTP, okay? HTTP and HTTPS, the basic difference there is HTTPS is secured and HTTP is not secured, of which is advisable to transmit all your data over the internet through a secured protocol, okay? Then the next one is FTP. This is just 3 examples. We have more. The FTP is file transfer protocol. Whatever we do on the internet, there is a rule that guides the sending and receiving, encryption and decryption, encoding and decoding of resources over the internet. And whatever resource or whatever protocol you are to use depends on the resource you are sending over the internet. Okay, the next one is the authority, which is composed of user information, host, and port. Okay, when we are talking about a path, whenever you encounter a slash on a website, apart from the protocol slash, that signifies the path to a resource, which could be an image, a web page, or a file. Okay, then we're talking about a query. It provides additional parameter to refine the resource request. For instance, if you have something like www.google.com/Q, okay, with question mark. Okay, whenever you encounter a question mark, it's basically called a query path, which contains a fragment, which could be a resource name or a resource ID as declared in the HTML structure of that particular website. Okay, of which what we have here, excuse me, of which what we have here is example.com, the is running on port 8080, and we declare a path to a particular resource. It must not necessarily be a path. It depends on a name-given path, okay, or a name-given resource over the internet. Then the types of URI. We have basically URL, which is Uniform Resource Locator, and URN, which is Uniform Resource Name. There are basically differences between Uniform Resource Locator and Uniform Resource Identifier. Let's pay attention to the definition. Uniform Resource Locator specifies the location of a resource and the method to retrieve them. For instance, if we have a page or we have a file on our website, an HTML file that is named index.html, which is basically a convention for naming the home page of your web application. Okay, now we have example.com/index.html. That will basically get the home page or the index.html file, and it will be displayed by the browser. Okay, and when we're talking about uniform resource network name, we identify a resource by name with a specific namespace. Okay, so for resource locator, we use a path for getting that name. Then for uniform resource name, we identify a particular resource using a given name, okay, within a specific namespace. A good example is Amazon Resource Network. Okay, for most of us that use AWS, there is ARN there, which is a good example of URN. So let's take a difference between URI, URL, and URN. So basically, URI is the parent of URL and URN, okay? Because types of URI includes URL and URN. So it's clear to understand that all URLs and URNs are URIs. Basically because URL and URN are types of URI. Okay, so but it's clear to understand that not all URIs are URLs. Okay, that's basically, so when they mean not all URIs are URLs or URN, so when we are talking about, we have two types of URI, which include URL, Uniform Resource Locator,
All right, so I think there's a glitch in this network. Please let's just hold on a bit for him to join back. Okay, so it's actually taking him a bit of time. Well, all right, so Mr. Samuel, I wanted to ask him a question yesterday while we wait for him to join back. Hello, please, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, so I think the question is built on what Nafisat asked last time, where she asked about AI. Okay, hi Daniel, are you back? Can you hear us?
Yes. At what point did you guys stop hearing me?
We stopped hearing you at when you were trying to say not all URIs are URLs or URNs.
I don't know why my network is misbehaving this morning, but let's continue.
So we can
Um,
barely see your screen.
Please make me a
You're not
host.
sure. Okay, done. Okay, Mr. Samuel, I guess we'll ask that. We'll continue that conversation later.
Okay, so okay, I think I have somewhere here. All right. Okay, so URI schemes. I think this was the place I got cut off. So we have
I think it's the
basically
slide before this one.
okay, slide before this one.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay,
yes.
all URLs, okay, here. So I think I stopped somewhere here, but not all URIs are URLs or URL. Okay, so here now we're talking about URI schemes. Okay, I explained this earlier, but without this slide before now. So we have basically protocols. Protocols include HTTP, and the senior guy of that is HTTPS for web page. Okay, then we have for file transfer protocol, which is FTP for file transfer, mail2 for email addresses, then data for embedding small data items directly in a new page. Okay, so when we're talking about custom schemes, your application depends. Okay, it can define a custom URL scheme. So this custom URL scheme could be, let me say, a token. If you are building a web APIs, okay, that the mobile guys can use, you can create a way of verifying your users by using a particular token, either encoding and decrypting coding token rather, to know the expiration time and maybe update something else. Okay, so when we are talking about the scheme, we are talking about the protocols. In case of a web application, it can be HTTP or HTTPS. For file, it can be FTP, mail2 for mail, and that's that. Then when we're talking about subdomain, is a domain that has dot, something like www dot is a subdomain. LMS.bincom, LMS there is a subdomain. And then we're talking about the top level domain, which is the domain name extension. And in this aspect, we can have, excuse me, we can have .com, .org, .ng, .whatever, .us, .uk, depending on the domain name and whatever it is you want it for. Then we have subdirectory. So this is when we're talking about getting a path, okay, in a URI, getting a path to a particular resource, either by a name, and this is by a path, not by a name. Okay, then these are the syntax structure of uniform resource identifier. The general syntax is a scheme. Like I said, a scheme could be, a scheme generally is the protocol, which can be HTTP, HTTPS, FTP, and many more. Okay, then we have a user, a password. So this is basically for maybe connecting to a database, okay, by giving it the user a port and maybe some other requirements for logging into a particular database. The syntax of a scheme are case sensitive, which means capital A is not the same as capital B. It's also worth to note that host names are case sensitive as well. Parts, query, and fragment components are also case sensitive. Examples of URIs, okay, web page like www.google.com/about is an example of uniform resource identifier. Then for file URI, okay, for when you have HTTP, when it begins with HTTP, you are talking about web page uniform resource identifier. Then for file URI, it starts with FTP. Okay, for email, we have mail to. If you have your anchor tag on a web page and you have email to, on clicking that, that redirects you to your mailing app, of which you can use that to send a mail to the referenced email address. Then for uniform resource name, you have something like this. A good example is Amazon resource name. Okay. All right. So when we're talking about URI encoding, okay, why encoding is very, very important is URI can only contain a limited set of characters. Okay, we have special characters like colon, which is used to differentiate between a protocol and a top level domain, and also a subdomain. Okay, then for question mark, it is used for query parameters. Okay, slash is used for locate a particular part on Amazon resource, on uniform resource identifier. Then when we're talking about percentage encoding, percent encoding, if you have a space, okay, between two characters, like if you go to your browser URL bar and type, maybe a Google URL bar and type what is a noun, or should I say what is technology? Okay, the space in between your characters is always replaced with %20. Okay, then for at rate, for at symbol, it is replaced with %40. So depending on what you type on your keyboard, your browser has a preferred encoding that is always unique for a particular character on your keyboard, a particular symbol. So when we have this example.com search, when we have search, then with a query of Q, then we have URI plus encoding. Okay, so if not for this plus, it will be replaced with %20 if you had space in there. So we talk about uniform resource identifier and uniform resource locator. The key differences: uniform resource locator specify both the location and the retrieval method of a resource. The uniform resource identifier, a broader term that includes URLs and URNs. Okay, remember that URL is a type of URN. Okay, when to use each? Use URI when referring to any resource identifier. Use URL when specifically discussing resource location. A good example of that, like I said, something like example.com/index.html. Okay, that is a good resource locator. You are referencing a particular resource by its part and and its location. The slash specifies that the file is in the root folder of your application project. URI use cases. Like I said, for URL, a good example is for web browser access. Okay, typing a URI in a browser to access a web page. Before you access any website or before you get served by any website locator, oh, my network. You have to enter the particular uniform resource locator of that page, then you get a response, either a 400, 404, or internal server error, depending on the state of the server. Okay, we're talking about application programming interface. We have representative state transfer, APIs, use URL to identify endpoints and resources. Okay, endpoints for posts, for get, for user login, for emails or something like that. Then for file transfer, use FTP URLs for downloading or uploading files. For mail tool, for mails. Okay, when you use anchor tag with a mail tool attribute, that refers you to your mailing app with the email address having it in the email to subject, sorry, mail to email to send field. Okay, basically what mail to does. So we'll talk about security consideration on resource identifier. One is phishing and malicious URIs. Okay, it should be URIs in emails or messages, especially from unknown sources. URI redirection. For instance, you might see a website and on clicking it, it will redirect you to another web page. Okay, so you might be familiar with facebook.com and you are sent a link that is called login to a Facebook. So when you click that link, it redirects you to a different URL, which is not the intended URL. So we have to be cautious about that. Okay, so best practices, sorry. Okay, best practices is to use HTTPS URIs for secure communication. Always verify the authenticity of URI before clicking a link. Okay. Designing URI, best practices for using uniform resource identifier. Keep URI simple, readable, and meaningful. So I don't think, for instance, you are building a web application for transportation and using, should I say, word meaning, or should I say something that is not related to that of transportation. So it's advisable to use a readable, a meaningful, okay, and a simple URI. Avoid using spaces and special characters. Use hyphen instead of underscore. Okay, if you have something like prime assets, or should I say prime global shipping, or maybe say Nigerian government secure, or something like that. So instead of using an underscore between your name of your domain name, use a hyphen, which is a dash. Okay. Ensure URIs are consistent and follow a logical structure. Maintaining URI integrity. Avoid changing URIs if possible. Use redirection if a URI must change, okay, so that it won't bring doubt. If you may likely change your URIs, you might like to use a redirection, something like pdfdrive.net. If you visit pdfdrive.net, that was their initial domain name, okay, but if you visit pdfdrive.net, it will take you to pdfdrive.com. All right, so implement HTTPS to secure communication. Okay, so far we've talked about URIs, which are the fundamental to web architecture, enabling identification and interaction with resources. Understanding the structure and use of URI is crucial for web development, API design, and internet security. So understanding the structure, also understanding the security approaches in terms of, or understanding a good use cases in terms of using a good URI, namespacing, also using a meaningful URIs for your application. Okay. The next step to this is to practice constructing and using URIs. Explore how URIs are utilized in different web technologies. So thank you very much. If you have any question, we are here to share the ideas today.
All right, thank you so much, Daniel. So just like he said, if we have questions, please, let's ask. Does anybody have a question? All right, so I guess his questions will trigger questions.
Okay, I have a couple of questions here. I don't know why my internet is so unstable. Can you guys still hear me? Hello?
I can hear you.
Okay, so my questions are always in kind of, should I say, discussing. Okay. So how do you think the structure of a URI impacts web development and API design? Can you provide an example from your experience? Okay, the question is, how do you think the structure of a uniform resource identifier impacts web development and API design? Can you provide an example from your experience?
All right, please, can anyone attempt questions? Your questions are more like you're setting an example for professionals.
What you did that made me start behaving this way. Okay, it's fine. So, since we have time, let's kind of share the ideas together. So, when we're talking about the structure of a uniform resource identifier, so first we said protocols. Okay, we're talking about protocols: HTTP, hypertext transfer protocol, and hypertext transfer protocol secured. The first structure is the scheme, which is the HTTP. Like we saw in the presentation, it is always advisable to use a secured URI, which is using HTTPS for web pages. Okay. The next structure, which is an added advantage to a developer and to any client he's building for, is having a good URI names. Like I said, having a meaningful, easy to remember, and should I say using a hyphen in your, or should I, if you have a space between your URI name, you have to separate them using a hyphen, okay, instead of an underscore. Then the impacts to web development, if someone is making API calls, or another impact is, if not, like as it was advisable, never to change your URI name over and over again, okay? For instance, you have something like Cloudinary API, and Cloudinary tends to change their API often. So some developers may have a high time having to read documentation again to get the actual base or sub-level domain of that particular API, okay? So a good example of that, like I said, is one of them having a good name, which gives you reputation in your organization, okay? Another one is being secured over the internet and enabling users of your application to feel free and feel secured when using your application, okay? In what ways can the misuse or improper handling of URIs pose security risk? How do you mitigate this risk? Am I alone?
Certainly not. We are with you.
Okay, so like I said, let me continue after the question, then I'll answer them. So like I said, improper misuse, improper handling of URLs pose security risk. One, you're always advisable to use, okay, let me just use one use case here. You're always advisable to use HTTPS and use redirection. Okay, security risk is if you don't use a secured communication over your URIs, that might lead to a security risk whereby hackers tending to use your application. Okay, for instance, there's what we call distributed denial of service. This is not included in terms of HTTPS and non-HTTPS, which is HTTP and HTTPS. But distributed denial of service is a situation whereby, for instance, someone has a bot, okay? Just a Python script or Python automation that goes to a website, get the input of username, password, and email address, okay, of your form submission. Then using Selenium bots or something else, okay, any Python script that can do this over and over and over and over again, okay, thereby making the server to be busy. And at the end of the day, even the hosting company may bring your account to suspension because it is posing so much weight on their server, okay? So, but the case of a what misuse of improper handling of uniform resource identifier is in kind of a protection of this, okay? Making sure that the users of your application feel secured while using your application. That is one. But I'm in kind of, was it because of network that no one has even attempted to answer any of my questions? I don't know. Then how do you see the role of URIs evolving with emerging web technologies like the Internet of Things and blockchain? Okay,
You can call names if
it's
you want
fine.
to, but just that the questions are very technical, so it
Okay,
requires
okay.
someone that has.
What is the basic difference between URLs and URN?
All right, please let's attempt the question. Call somebody to help to respond.
I'm on my slide. Okay, let me go out of it so that I can get people on our team.
But you're not done explaining all of the questions.
Yeah, I'm just like feeling somehow. I'm calling the questions and answering them. I was in kind of suspecting the network must have made some people not to maybe listen to part of the stuff, or maybe I was rushing it anyways, but it's fine. Okay, so um, I think what challenges have you encountered when working with different type of URIs, which is URLs and URN in your project, and how did you address them? This is basically not for the design team, okay? This is basically for the those that work with this, okay? If you are, should I say, in Python development, you must have come across with this either using API or automating a particular web page or scraping a particular website. Okay, so now this is a good example. This particular website was built using Django. Okay, and Django has a trailing slash issues. For instance, if it is not handled in the root URL and you have a trailing slash at the end of your application, that may not work properly. Okay, you might have something like page not found, why it is the actual URL of that particular page. But because of the issue of the trailing slash, okay, that may make that not work. And your scraping may not work perfectly. So that's one of the use cases. I mean, real life challenges I've got using that. Okay. Another one is URN, Amazon Resource Network, is a good use case for this. So, but in this case, I was the one that types it I've got in URLs. Sorry, URN. Then the next one, oh, calling my attention. Okay, the next one is how important is it to maintain consistent and meaningful URI in large-scale web application? And what strategy can you use? Okay, fine. Just the question, how important is it to maintain consistent and meaningful URLs, URIs, that is Uniform Resource Identifier, in a large-scale web application? Or simply, how important is it to maintain consistent and meaningful URIs? I think this one is simpler this way.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think it is important to maintain consistent and meaningful URIs in large web application, because it kind of improve search engine rankings, and also it help you understand the application structure and help navigate it easily. Also, in terms of security, consistent URLs, it will reduce the risk of URL injection, attacks, and vulnerabilities.
Who answered the question?
Antonia.
So you've been here, Antonia?
Yes, I've
Anyway,
been here, I've been observing.
That was perfect. Like that was perfect. Okay. One is maintaining search. In fact, what I love most there is maintaining search engine optimization. Because if you purchase a domain today, there is no way you'll be seeing the ranking of that domain today. Okay. Now, your search engine optimization starts from one, if you have someone that can optimize that. Then secondly, if that domain has, should I say, if that domain is old enough, you can't purchase a domain today and expect to see it ranking over those that have been in existence before it. Okay. Thank you very much, Antonia. You should have answered all these questions. They are simple anyways, maybe because of the structure.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, long at the same time.
Okay, it's fine, it's fine. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Jesus, we've exceeded the time. Sorry about that.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Do have a productive day. Okay. Yeah, Chidera, I actually checked for you earlier. So what will happen is that you just keep observing, and then we'll let you know when you are to present. All right. Please, did you get
All
that?
right.
But today you kind of joined a bit late, so
Yeah, I was doing something earlier.
all right, no problem. Thank you, everyone. Bye.